also with the 484th Bomb Group.
Well, it just so happens that I'm going to tell you how we got there, but anyhow, we picked up a plane, a brand new B-24, and we flew it overseas to our base in the 484th to the 825th Squadron. And they needed us badly because they had been hit very hard in the past. And so what happened was that on our very first mission, I'm a flight engineer, and I was supposed to be assistant flight engineer because I was a rookie and didn't know what to expect. And I go out to the plane and I do my inspection, and I could go to the chief. I says, "Chief, where is the flight engineer?" I said, "I'm supposed to be his assistant." He said, "I got news for you, you're it." So we took off for Vienna too. And we were going to Vienna, and on the way, everything was fine, you know, it felt comfortable. I sat in the top turret too, got up there, and then all of a sudden I saw flak. Boy, it looked like the 4th of July. I said, "Wow, look at this." Then all of a sudden I hear rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. That's the shrapnel coming into the plane. So I turned around to my navigator, my navigator, who was on the flight deck, and I said, "Danny, go over there and get me a piece of that flak suit. This stuff is coming up from underneath. I could get ruined for the rest of my life." So he went over and got me a piece of flak suit. Well, I sat on that flak suit, but just so happened that when I asked him to move, a piece of flak came over right where he was standing, hit the front of my turret, and ricocheted out the other side. It was just a miracle. And so I get back, I'm in my turret, and then all of a sudden I get a call. "Jerry, we got a problem." That's my pilot talking. Now he was flying as co-pilot. There was a major flying as the pilot because being that he wouldn't know what to do, and this major was training him how to fly in formation, which was very, very essential to all of us. So he says, "We got a problem." Well, when he said that, "we got a problem," holy mackerel, I'm a real rookie. What kind of problem could we have? He says, "You know, we've got no controls." I said, "No controls? Put it on automatic pilot." He says, "I did." I said, "Well, keep it there for a minute. Let me get out." I went into Bombay, walked on the catwalk, reached where the lines came from the wing to the tail, and I jerked on them. I thought maybe they had been hit, and we were in real trouble. So I pulled it, there was 4 lines, and I jerked on it. I was weighing, at that time, 129 pounds. And 5'11", and pretty strong. And I jerked as hard as I could, and everything held. So I went back to the intercom and I said, "PJ, take it off of the automatic pilot, but be ready to slam it back on. I think we're okay." Actually, it held, and we flew home. Well, he says, "You know, the major had his hand on the bailout button. Our first mission, we're going to bail out." So he said, "I'm the one that stopped him and said, just give my flight engineer a shot." But that was one real close call. As I said, there was a lot of hot targets in Europe. One of the hardest, I think, was Palesti oil fields. The Germans really wanted to protect it because that was their lifeblood. And I knew, and we knew, that if we could knock it out, we could shorten the war. And I took 3 trips over that target. There was actually 485 anti-aircraft guns there, 285 anti-aircraft guns. But the biggest problem was when you got in there, it was just a shield of shrapnel. once you got through there, there had the ME-109s had the Germans, their pilots were the ace pilots. They had a yellow nose. And when you saw the yellow nose, you know those pilots had 10 kills. And they were looking for more, naturally. And they were looking for cripples. The thing is that when you go through the flat, you do lose engines, you lose power, and you cannot stay in the formation, and that's what they were looking for. And they would jump on you like a mosquito. And so, and we didn't have fighter protection either, because it was too far for the fighters to follow us that far in. And so our salvation was to stay tight. I could actually, we stayed so tight, I could look at the co-pilot's eyes and see him from my top turret. But we kept it real tight. And so luckily, the 3 times that I went over there, we made it back. But let me tell you, if you sent 400 planes in over Palestine, the casualty was 25%. You're going to lose 100 planes, you're going to lose 1,000 men, just 1, 2, 3. And it was, everybody knew that that was the toughest target we had in Europe. Then there was a time that we were back at our base, and this was after 25th mission. They sent us on a lone wolf mission by ourselves. We had a radar ship, and they said it's going to be clouds all the way. You don't have to worry. You're not going to have to worry with the fighters, because the clouds are safe. You stay in the clouds, they won't come in after you. So we took off. Well, we flew up there, and we got to the target, CAVU, absolutely clear. So I was standing on the flight deck, because there was no sense in being in the turret when it was all clouds. So PJ's turned and said, "What should we do? Should we turn around and go back?" I said, "Hell, we're here already. We did make this mission count." We were all anxious to get to 35. Well, actually, I was under the old system, 50. But so we went over the target, and we bombed it. And I looked down, and I could see the ME-109 starting to flight, come off the ground. And I said, "PJ, get this damn plane out of there, because I see them coming." So he put it in a little bit of a dive, and we hit the clouds and came back home. Well, the general, I don't know his name, was there to meet us when we got down, and we landed. And he was so excited. He said, they already had a report, you had 80% hit on the target. And he said, I'm going to give you a DFC for the officers, and I'm going to give the presidential citation for the enlisted men. Well, that really ticked me off, because there's one thing you had to have on a B-24. You had to have the pilot, the co-pilot, and the flight engineer. If you had those 3, you could take it off. If you didn't have those 3, there was a problem. Right, John?
Right.
So, that's what happened anyhow. The other things that happened was that after that flight, we went to Rome. Colonel Gordon, myself, and my bombardier and my radio operator. We drove to Rome, to Rome, and to make a broadcast back to the States. It was PR, and as a matter of fact, it was played in Charlotte, North Carolina, after that. But the thing that happened was that we went there, And we were supposed to be there for 3 days or 2 days, and we were there for a week. And my commanding officer was with us, so as long as he said okay, it's okay. So, but one of the things that happened is that we ran out of money. I didn't know that we were going to go to Rome. I mean, we'd go up there, and I borrowed money from different crew members that I knew, like $25 from this one, $25, and I had $125 to start with. So they didn't know whether we were still flying combat, whether they ever get paid back or not, but they were taking a chance. So anyhow, we got up there, and we stayed in a private home. We didn't stay in the barracks, and we ate in the restaurants. And you know, in Italy, you eat in the restaurants, wine's on the table. That's like water. So it was really wonderful. And we had a wonderful time, and all of a sudden we were running out of money. So I talked to my radio operator, Bob. I says, let's go over to the PX and see if we can get some supplies. You know, we had a card that they punched and told you, well, you know, that you had supplies for that month. And so we went over there, and our cards had never been punched, because at the 484th, for our squadron, whatever came in, it got divided, and they never punched the cards. So we go over there and handed him the cards and said, we'd like to get our rations. He looked at it and he says, have you been a POW? No. He said, well, why these cards aren't punched? Well, we just never had the opportunity to come in the PX to get it, you know. So he says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2 weeks. That's all I'm going to do you. So he gave us 2 weeks of cigarettes, candy, and the supplies. And with that, I said, Bob, let's go get a haircut. We needed it anyhow. So we went and got a haircut. Well, I was sitting in the barber's chair, and I said to the guy, I says, you know anybody that want to buy some cigarettes and some candy? No, you don't know, the black market. No. Well, guess what? He gave us a haircut, and he told Giuseppe, his old boy, to go somewhere. We walked outside of the barbershop, and the guy said, psst, psst, psst. And there we were. And we made enough money off of those supplies that held us for the rest of that time. Also, a very interesting thing that happened was that Bob and I, well, we made a pact with the colonel. He had the Jeep one day, and we had it the next day. So we could visit and look around Rome. So we went to the Vatican. Well, we were looking at the Vatican, and we were looking around and looking at all the wonderful stuff that they were bringing out. And they were bringing it out from the catacombs then and starting to put it on display. So we turned around and said, looking at it, and somebody comes over to Bob and says, would you want to have an audience with the Pope? Well, he turned around to me, I'm Jewish. He says, you want to have an audience with the Pope? I said, why not? So we go up by the Swiss guards upstairs to a small chapel. It was, well, I said relatively small. There was this 75 soldiers there from England and from Australia and from the States. And the Pope came out, spoke perfect English, told us how wonderful it was that we were there, and how wonderful it was that we never bombed the Vatican or Rome. And then he, at the end of it, he came around and he, nose to nose, said, bless you, my son. And Bob and I were standing in the back, because the time we got up there, all the pews were full. So we just stood in the back with several others. And he came up and said to me, bless you, my son. And I said, thank you, sir. And I said, I'll take all the blessings I can get. I've done this. What I was going to say was that, I actually finished my missions ahead of my crew, because Colonel Gardner, he flew with us one time, and whenever he flew, he could select his own crew. He didn't have a crew. So after he flew with us, I became his personal flight engineer. Wherever he went, I went. Even though my crew was flying the same mission, and my pilot, it killed him. He went in the early room and he was raising Cain. And this major told him if he didn't get the heck out of there, he'd get court-martialed. Because he said, I brought him over here. We were superstitious, we didn't know whether the next flight would be our last flight. So, and we get separated, that everybody took a chance. So, the colonel still, I became his flight engineer and flew more missions. In fact, one time I flew 6 straight days in combat. And on the 7th day, the major said, or at least I found out about it, that I was going to fly a practice mission. Now, I had 6 days in the air in combat. I sure didn't need a practice mission. But the practice mission was to check out the engines. They put a new engine on a plane, you had to take it off and check it out, make sure that it would feather and that everything was okay, everything was connected. But I went in there to the major and I said, sir, I'm not going if you put me on that flight. He said, what do you mean you're not going? I said, I'm not going. He says, you'll go if I order you to go. I said, yes, sir. I'm going right to the flight surgeon. I'm going to get grounded for 2 weeks as a combat fatigue. So guess what? He didn't put me on there. But there's a mission I want to tell you about that we went to Blackenheim, Germany. And those of you who have been there, Blackenheim, it is a long, long haul for us. And we had a full load of blockbusters. But we had this plane, and planes are different. Some would eat up fuel faster than others. And it was my duty, my responsibility to monitor the gas. Well, we were going up to Blackenheim, and I checked our fuel, and I said to PJ, PJ, we can't make it. We're not going to be able to make it with this load. I said, we've got to drop one of these bombs. So we pulled out of the formation, and we did drop one bomb. It was a 2,000-pounder. So that helped us, and we got back into formation. Well, we came off the target after we bombed, and come up the target. Our formation broke up because no one could stay together, but because you're throttling back and forth, and you're using gas like crazy. And so I put ours on just about as lean as it could do and stay in the air. And we were heading back home. And then they told you about the island of Vis. Well, we got to where the island of Vis should have been. And my navigator says, we're just about over island of Vis. Well, that's what was planned. We were at 10,000 feet at the time. I said, Danny, are you sure that island's underneath those clouds? He says, well, I think it is. I said, no, don't think, just tell me yes or no. Is it underneath, is that island of this down there? He said, well, I think. I said, So PJ and I talked. I said, the Adriatic Sea was 20 miles across. I said, I'd rather take my chance and see if I could make it to Italy rather than to go down, because if we go down and it's not there, forget it. We cannot come back up because we don't have enough gas. So luckily, we came across the waters, I'm going to say that, Adriatic Sea, and you know, when that was the longest 20 miles I've ever flown. I'm telling you, it just creaked. And we kept lowering it down, and we got to land. When we did, there was an airstrip right there. Their fighters were coming in, trying to land. And I said, PJ, you can't box it in. You got to fly the sucker in there because there's no way that we can box it and make it. I had already transferred all the fuel from the auxiliary tanks into the main tanks. I had put the one for all tanks. Any tank needed gas, it could get it, supposedly. So we went on an approach, and as we were coming down, ZZ, my bombardier, was on the deck, and I said, we had no communications with the tower. I said, ZZ, fire red, red. That tells them that we're in an emergency, and we cannot deviate. Well, he fired red, 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 yellow, red, green, anything had red on it, he fired it. The control tower was so messed up, they didn't know. We had the fire trucks, the ambulances lined up, and here we come. Well, we're about, I'd say about maybe 600 or 700 feet, we lose one engine, goes out. It's on the left side. Then we come down, we've got to about 300 feet, and we lose another engine, but it was on the right side, thank goodness. So we're still going, and then finally we got to about 50 feet off the ground, and we lose the third engine right on the runway. I mean, there's a top hatch right there. I opened that top hatch and screamed like bloody murder. I was so excited and so charged up, you wouldn't believe. Well, we taxied off the runway right away with that one engine so the fighters could come in. And the commanding officer came out to us and said, you boys hungry? He said, yeah, because we hadn't eaten about 8 hours. So he said, okay, we'll take you to the mess hall. So he took us to the mess hall, and the tower was supposed to have notified our tower that we were there. Well, guess what? Snafu again. They didn't do it. But when we finished eating, the commanding officer says, we'll put you on a truck and send you back to Sherignola. We'll send you back to your base. So we climbed up on the rear end of this truck, and he took off, and we got in there about 10:30 that night. Well, they had us MIA because some planes had seen that we were going down, and they thought we went down in the Adriatic. They didn't see it, but they knew that we were going down. So when we walked into the orderly room, they were shocked. Where did you come from? How did you get here? We said, by truck. So we went through interrogation. On one flight, I want to say that we were flying, and I looked outside from a turret, and I saw an object flying, and no engine, no anything, but it stayed outside, didn't come in. We were watching it, and we go back to intelligence when we come back, and we say, we looked, I saw something flying. It was up there. What is it? It was a jet. It was a German jet. They couldn't stay up there about 30, 40 minutes, they claimed. But what they were doing was giving it our direction and our height, so the anti-aircraft fires and the fighters knew what directions we were going to and where they could pick us up. And that was the first jet I'd ever seen. Didn't understand what a jet was, but that was it. But all in all, thank God, we made it back. There's something I want to say too, is that, I had a major that could not get in a plane. He knew that the next mission was his last mission. He'd flown 25, and the 26th one was going to be his last. And he couldn't get back. I mean, he couldn't go. And they sent him back home. Well, the way that I got through, and I'll tell you the truth, is that I had made up my mind that it wasn't my power to make it, get me back. That it was the man upstairs. He controlled it, whether I come in or I don't come in. So why worry about it? And there's one last thing I want to say is that we'll leave you with this thought. A wise man said, "Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Sir Winston Churchill.